Welcome everybody. I hope you enjoyed the last video that we put out. We're in Ecclesiastes, looking at some of the wisdom that Solomon is putting out. So today we're going to be in Ecclesiastes 2. Last time we saw how in all his immense wisdom, Solomon still had this thought that without God, everything that he did was meaningless. And so we see a lot of despair inside this book. We're going to read some more of that today. It's actually going to go on and on and on inside this book. And so we're really going to see the depths of Solomon's soul as he searches for answers into what actually has meaning in this life. So if we could be in Ecclesiastes 2, I'm going to read it here for us. I said to myself, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good." But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. My mind is still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom, and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. So I hated life, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days their work is grief and pain. Even at night their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. I'm sorry for this, guys. What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh my. I guess you guys can see Mara here. She wants to be. Can I finish here, please? Mara girl. Good night. What are you doing? Let me push her off of me, and then we'll get back to finishing this up. We're going to start in verse 24. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a cleansing after the wind. Here in Ecclesiastes 2, we see Solomon engage the pursuit of pleasure, and that he tests it, right? So he's going through this measurement of what actually matters in life. What are the things that I want to spend my time trying to accomplish? And so he's writing this down, right? And he's going through life, and he spends years chasing the things that oftentimes we chase as well in order to find happiness, in order to find meaning, in order that we may somehow have some kind of existence in this world that has some sort of meaning. And so he talks about the things that he's done, and is it quite a list? Somebody with the resources that Solomon had, he was able to accomplish quite a bit in this world. In fact, there's probably nothing in terms of the acts of the flesh that Solomon was not able to achieve, right? He talks about how he had slaves, and those slaves had children in his house and things like that. I think the implications there are the acts of the flesh. That is really what the implication there is. He creates these grand houses. He plants these vineyards. He's doing all these things. He's gathering wealth. He has more gold and silver than anyone who ever came before him. His name, he was famous. He had fame and power and wealth. He had all these things. And he turns around and he says that all was meaningless because he looks towards the end of what that is. And even throughout, what Solomon sees the certainty of death, is that he finds out and he looks through the entirety of his work, and he sees that no matter if you are the wisest, if you are the richest, if you are the poorest, if you are he calls him a fool, but we'll say the dumbest, whatever you are, you will have to face death at some point. And this is where I think the heart of his despair comes from. It's because in a world where things die, and things do die because of sin being in the world, sin equals death. Sin is death. And because sin is in this world, everything that we have is facing death. I think you can also see from the very beginning, when death starts to enter the world, we can see until now that things are getting worse and worse and worse. That death is just overcoming all. And this is going to be the end of us, humanity, as it were, is that death will just overtake. Eventually, we'll start to see more and more cancer. We'll see people are living with more and more autoimmune diseases and things like this. And I think that this is just death overtaking the world. And so Solomon sees this, and he sees that no matter what you do or what you build in this world, everything is meaningless because everybody faces death. And that really is despair. That's hopelessness. Is that what does it matter what I put into anything if even my inheritance is going to go to a fool? And for Solomon, that's exactly what happened, right? Rehoboam, his heir, takes over everything that he had built and basically threw it all away because he was a fool. So Solomon is really in this crisis where he's trying to figure things out. But we come to a point where he eventually mentions God. So we can see that within his despair, he does have this idea of the divine. But I think what he's really struggling with here is what eternity really means. I don't think he quite sees it within all of the pleasures that he's had. And so I already kind of told you guys last time, this is where Solomon is building to in the book of Ecclesiastes. He's building to what eternity really means and what has wealth and value. So I hope that you guys will come back and see us next time when we want to kind of dive into Ecclesiastes. I want to share a really quick thing with you guys. Ecclesiastes is actually the story, in my story anyway, it's the book that actually led me to Christ. Because even though it is filled with this great many despairs, it's also filled with great wisdom inside of it. And that was one of the things that really checked off for me, is that I was able to see the wisdom that was inside this book. And it made me go, well, if this is true, then what else is true? And so diving into the Bible, I was able to see the truth of the word of truth. And it really led me to Christ. So this is I'm glad I get to share this study with you guys, as this was such an integral part of me becoming a Christian. Because Solomon is really going to get down to it. And if you look into the things that he says and you really concentrate on what he's trying to say, and you see this end goal, I think it all really makes sense, especially considering someone who doesn't see the divinity and righteousness of God and how eternity plays into the most important aspect of our life here. So thank you guys for coming out for Bible Bites. I hope to see you guys next time when we go into Ecclesiastes 3. Everybody stay safe, and I'll be praying for you guys every day.